three general topics that I'd like to talk about today. And remember that this afternoon we're going to have a lot of time for questions. We'll have hours and hours that we can devote to your questions. But between now and then, I've got three subjects that I'd like to talk to you about. First, we're going to talk about healing, remote viewing. Then we're going to talk about food, what you eat, how it affects your mind and your consciousness, and some moral choices there. And then, if we have time, I'd like to talk a little bit about male-female relationships, because I've had a lot of people come up and ask me questions along that line. So I thought we'd talk that. We'll mention, I've been asked to talk a little bit about forgiveness, and so we've got a lot of things to talk about, so let's get started. First of all, the subject I'd like to talk about is healing. It sounds a little inconsistent, perhaps, when I tell you about how you do healing and how you do, the out of body is a possibility, and remote viewing, and I talk about all these things. And then, of course, I also tell you that all this paranormal stuff is totally unnecessary. It's not actually really important unless you learn something about growing up and becoming loved from doing it. If it's just fun, then it's not really very significant. Well, when it comes to healing, there's another component that I didn't address very well, and that is the upside is that you can use these things, the remote viewing and the healing, to as concrete examples of the larger consciousness system and how it works, that your intent actually modifies matter, that you are consciousness and you are more than just this physical system. So it's a good practical exercise, and I offer it because what I present is trying to give a pathway to those left-brainers who otherwise just will never get it. And these left-brain people who just otherwise won't get it need some kind of show-me process. So I offer the remote viewing and the healing as a good experiment, a good experiential way for you to experience the truth of the larger consciousness system. And for that reason, I kind of encourage you all to go try it, because it will prove to you that reality is more than just physical and objective. So that's one reason. But there is a downside. You must be a little careful when you use your mind to modify probability. And that's really what I wanted to mention here. And that is, you cannot overrun somebody else's free will. You don't want it to be intent versus intent. I'm going to force you to be the way I want you to be because I can modify probability. I can get what I want by doing that. I can make my boss have a higher probability of wanting to give me the raise instead of the guy in the cubicle next to me. You see, that sort of thing is serving the ego and serving the fear. And people can sometimes get attached to those sorts of things. Sometimes they have a lot of ego in the fact that, they've been practicing healing for a few years or a few months, and they get reasonably good at it, and now they feel very special. Even superior, perhaps, to the other people who can't do this sort of thing. That's a trap. So things like remote viewing and healing and going out of body, they're sort of like the pretty flowers. They're attractive. people hear about that and they go, oh wow, I'd like to be able to do that. I really want to do that because that would prove to me that there's some reality to this, and it's an attractive element that gets people's interest and it draws them to it. But what it has to do is, one, it can give them that evidence they're looking for, but if it traps them, and that's really their whole point, is to gain power in their ability to do this, and that's a trap. So you have to be careful. In your healing, you have to be careful that you don't heal somebody who really shouldn't be healed. And you're thinking, why shouldn't anybody be healed? Disease is a teacher. Disease can be an integral part of somebody's path. Even dysfunction. We talk about maybe you're born with a unbalanced brain chemistry, maybe with only one leg or one arm or some other difficulty. These handicaps are opportunities. Sometimes it's just the path we've chosen. And it's not only that we can learn from them, that everybody around us can learn from it. See, we can be a learning tool for everyone else as they interact with our unusualness or our specialness or our handicaps or whatever. So you don't want to take necessarily everything away. You don't want to heal everyone. Now, there's two kinds of illness. One is the ones we create ourselves. Through our dysfunction, we create illness. And if that's the case, that illness is on our path. It's part of our feedback. It's what we've created. And we probably have a lesson in it. On the other hand, there's illness that just happens. It's just part of the rule set and randomness. You just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you pick up a germ and you get sick. Well, there's not a big lesson in there for you other than to deal with the sickness, I suspect. And if you get a little help to deal with it from somebody's intent or your own intent, well, that's a good thing. Okay? It was just a random event. It's not something major for you to learn from. It's just like everything else. You can maybe learn from it, but it's not something on your path to deal with particularly. It's just something that happened on the way. And those are things that we can heal most easily with our minds. And we can help each other with our minds. If you try to heal someone and you notice that you seem to be effective, but as soon as you pause a little bit, it comes right back. You get rid of those black spots, and in a little bit, they come right back. Or if you're a real strong healer, all right, you force those black spots away, and that person does get better, but, they get some other kind of problem that serves the same function but replaces it. That's your signal that this person needs that. This is on their path, and as you try to take it away, it gets put right back. So that's time to leave it alone. Understand that everybody has to deal with the things they have to deal with, and it's not always the appropriate thing to heal. Sometimes you have to let it be. So, just some things to think about as we think about the healing and the remote viewing and so on. They're wonderful things because I tell you, it's not your truth until it's your experience. And a natural reaction for you is, how do I get the experience? Well, I need to give you some easy, simple way to gain experience with the larger conscious system, and there's nothing any simpler or easier than remote viewing or healing. Very easy things to do with a little practice. So go practice them. Don't get trapped by them. Don't get too focused on them. Know when it's time to quit. Don't force them, but play. Go play with them. Go learn. Go experience. Feel for yourself the way the larger consciousness system works. And then realize that it's really not very important in the big picture that you change anybody else's path other than your own. One of the interesting things is you'll find that the people who are most, what should we say, are most practiced, maybe most gifted, or whatever you want to say, with doing paranormal things are the people who do the fewest paranormal things. Eventually you realize that there's really not a lot of value in it other than the introduction to the larger consciousness system, seeing how it works, you learn from it, and after that you start to back away and say, well, why should I interfere? Just let things be the way they are. People are on their path. They're experiencing whatever it is they're experiencing. They can learn from it. Why should I reach in and change it? You see? And then you tend to do less of it, and then just kind of special occasions and things that touch your heart and whatever, and you do that, but you kind of let it go because it's really not all that important in the big picture. We can all learn from whatever we have. Okay, that didn't take a lot of time. I'd like to talk about something that will take a lot more time, and that's about food. It's about our bodies, it's about our health, but it's also about our ability to meditate, our ability to have a clear consciousness. Most of what we've talked about today has been based on having a clear consciousness, a conscious we can focus and be very strong with our intent. Okay, that's why we have meditation, just to be able to do that. Well, it turns out that there are things that you eat that make that difficult, make meditation a hard thing to do. Not that you can't overcome it. You can. You can kind of push your way through almost anything if your intent is strong and you work hard enough at it. But it'd be a lot easier if you didn't have to work against yourself. Now, anything that is a psychotropic substance, okay, will change the way your mind works. And we have a lot of psychotropic substances in our environment. And we think, oh, that's drugs like marijuana and stuff like that. But yes, that's true, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the common psychotropic substances that we all use, and most of us are addicted to: sugar, caffeine, used to be nicotine, but that's kind of decreased a lot. All of these substances are psychotropic substances, and of those, the one that will probably give you the most trouble is sugar. I'd also include in that list most preservatives. If they're natural preservatives like vitamin C, that's not a problem, but the chemical preservatives also are psychotropic. Most nerve agents, they'll affect your mind. Now that may be a little surprising to you, but the way it works is that when you take sugar, the sugar, and I'm talking about processed sugar for the most part, you can eat a banana, and that has fructose in it, but that fructose is bound up in the structure of the banana. And that structure dissolves slowly, so that sugar leaches into your system very slowly as that banana is digested. When you eat something that has sugar in it, and by sugar I mean honey, maple syrup, anything that is sweet like that, not a whole fruit, not a whole food, but a thing that's been manufactured or taken out of a tree or out of a bee's nest because it's sweet. Okay. Those things will digest almost instantly. Simple sugars are already pre-digested. Complex sugars get broken down into simple sugars. The simple sugar will go into your bloodstream, minutes, seconds after you swallow it. What happens is when you eat something with sugar in it as an ingredient, and I don't mean something really sweet, just something with sugar in it as an ingredient, even if that sugar is so slight that you don't taste it as sweet, because most of you are so used to sweet that it's really a lot of sweetener before you even notice that it's sweet. And sugar is in everything. Sugar's in bread. Sugar, you go to the grocery store and buy a bag of frozen French fries. Look at the ingredients. It has sugar in it. Your ketchup has sugar in it. Your mayonnaise has sugar in it. Even some of the meat you buy has sugar in it. When you buy those little hamburger patties that are already caked out, read the ingredients. You'll find some of those have sugar in them. Almost everything does. And the artificial sugars, sugar-free, but it's full of aspartame or xylitol or things like that. They're just as bad, even worse. So the sugar-free doesn't get you out either. What's going on? Now, I'm not a physiologist, so this is just Tom Campbell's best guess, right? I don't have a lot of credentials for saying this, but my guess is it's what happens is that your brain works on glucose. Glucose is a very important part of your physical system. Glucose is like the currency of energy in your system. Very important product. All the carbohydrates we eat turn into glucose. So we need that glucose. It's not that glucose is bad for us. It's not that sugar at that level is a bad thing. It's that when you ingest sugar, it digests instantly, simple sugars. It digests instantly, and you get a big spike in your blood sugar. So you eat a bite of candy bar, you eat a slice of bread, you have something with mayonnaise in it, and your sugar level in your blood spikes up. And then your pancreas says, whoa, too much sugar, and your pancreas secretes some insulin, and your blood sugar goes back down. Then the pancreas says, oh, too far. And it goes the other way, and the blood sugar goes back up, and your blood sugar is going like this. Well, those ups and downs caused by the blood sugar oscillate in your system for about 4 hours in a fairly large oscillation. It takes a long time for it to damp out. And by damp out, I mean it's big, smaller, 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 and eventually goes away. That's about a 4-hour process. And in 4 hours, what do? Well, that's the time between meals, right? You put more sugar in. And between meals, you have snacks, and most all of them have sugar. You eat a potato chip, it has sugar in it. You eat a pretzel, it has sugar in it. So what happens? Your body is going like this constantly. Your glucose levels are going up and down and up and down, and that produces an unstable environment in your brain. And you're thinking, oh, didn't you tell us it was just a virtual brain? Yes, but I also told you that virtual brain produces the constraints on your consciousness. Your consciousness can only experience what the avatar can do according to the rule set. And according to the rule set, your thinking machinery is unstable because the glucose levels are unstable. What does that do to you? How do you perceive that constant up and down of the sugar? You perceive it as kind of a fog, a sort of a fuzziness in your thinking. You don't notice it. Why? Because you've been a sugar addict since you were 1.5 years old. And that first birthday when you got that cupcake with the icing on it. See, it doesn't take much. We get addicted to sugar. Sugar, like any other drug, is addictive, and it's probably one of the worst addictions to get rid of. It's a very hard addiction to break. So that's a big problem. Now, caffeine is another one. Caffeine will affect your consciousness. We know that. It's an upper, right? It hypes us up, keeps us awake. But it also interferes with your ability to think clearly. Nicotine does the same thing. A lot of prescription medicines will have a similar effect. It used to be, not so much anymore. Some years back, if you recall, if you took an antihistamine, you had a cold and you took an antihistamine, that antihistamine would have a label on it that says, you can't operate machinery, you can't drive a car, you know, if you take this medicine. That's because it changed your ability to think, to respond, and so on. It left you in kind of a feeling like a zombie. If you took too much of it, you just needed to sit down and stare at a wall. You know, you couldn't really function very well. Well, now we have non-drowsy antihistamines, and it's not so much a problem, but that's the same thing. That antihistamine feeling that you used to get is the same thing you get with sugar. But because you've taken sugar all your life, you've redefined that foggy state as normal. So you don't notice it anymore, just like a fish doesn't notice water. Water's not something special, it's just normal, it's the environment. So you will find if you stop eating any kind of sugar, and that would go for those carbohydrates that digest very quickly. There are some carbohydrates that you eat, and probably a potato chip is one of them, because it's so thin, there's so little material there that it can dissolve and digest almost instantly. That kind of falls into the same category, but we'll just talk about sugars. When you stop with that sugar, you'll start getting withdrawal symptoms right away. You will want something sweet. You will need something sweet. And like all addicts, you will make excuses to help you get something sweet. You know how the alcoholic says, oh, I'll take just one more sip. That won't matter. That won't hurt anything. I'll just take one little, and that's just an excuse to get what they want. And you will say that. You'll say, well, this doesn't have much sugar in it. Or, oh, this is natural sugar. That'll be all right. You make all these excuses, and you buy things without reading the ingredients, most of which will have sugar in it. Probably 75, 80% of what you find on a grocery store shelf will have sugar in it as an ingredient. Why? Because sugar's addictive. Most people are sugar addicts. And when they do these tests, with taste tests, when they develop the products, they don't just develop them and put them out to sell. They study these products, and they have people come in and they give them 5 piles of French fries, and they sample all 5, and then they tell the people which one they like best. Well, French fries aren't sweet, but they have just a little sugar in them, and that's the one that people like best, because they're sugar addicts. They get a little hit of sugar, and they can't describe why they like that one best, but it's just better, you see? So the people who make food realize that, and if they want you to buy their product, they're going to put a little sugar in it, because you'll like it better. Whether you can taste it or not isn't the point. It's not the intellect involved here, it's your body. But if you let it go, if you actually cannot take any sugar, that doesn't mean a small amount, it means none. Cut it out. That means agave syrup and all the rest of that stuff along with it. The only one I've found that doesn't cause a problem is very small amounts of barley malt. If you take more than a very small amount, it also causes a problem. And barley malt seems to digest more slowly. It's just harder to digest. It's a more complex sugar. So I have found that as an exception. But if you take a big bunch of it, then it's going to bother you just the same. If you don't do it for 3 months, if you cannot do it for 3 months, the need for it the yearning for it. Okay, the addiction response will start to slow down in about 3 months to 6 months. And you will start to get clearer and clearer and clearer in your focus. Your mind will clear, your ability to think will get better, you'll be able to do your job better, things will just be clearer. It's like you gain 10 points on your IQ or something. Your world will clear up. But you won't notice it at first because it's happened over months. Just tiny little bit at a time. It'll happen over months. But after your 3 months to 6 months, you will accidentally end up getting some sugar. You'll eat something that you think didn't have sugar in it, and it will. And bang, you'll suddenly see the difference because within a minute, you'll go from clear to foggy. You may even get a headache. Your teeth and gums may start to ache. Your body starts to complain. And suddenly you realize that foggy way you feel now after you accidentally got that sugar, that's the way you used to live. You used to be that way all the time and didn't know it. And then it'll be dramatic, and you'll see the difference. Now, I've given this information to probably thousands of people by now, and I've gotten lots of feedback that they've done this, and it works just as I've told you. It's wow, I didn't know there was that much difference. Meditation is so much easier. Holding the point consciousness state is so much easier because my mind is clearer. So that's one thing. If you want to meditate, you can bull your way through it and still eat sugar and get there, okay. But if you let go of the sugar, you'll find that meditation, healing, all those things are easier, clearer. Okay, so that's one thing. And sugar is the worst. Also, get rid of the caffeine. That's the coffee and the colas and the sodas and that sort of thing. That'll also do it, but that is a shorter period. You take the caffeine, it'll depress your clarity for a short time, and then it'll kind of work out of your system. Same with preservatives. The preservatives will cloud your mind, but in an hour or two, it'll clear your system. When you stop taking these things, you will notice them later. The stop taking usually is not a dramatic, but the accidental getting them afterwards will show you what the difference is. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to tell you. Food is very important. Of course, well, let's now talk a little bit about well, we'll do meat next. Oh no, everybody's saying, oh no, we're not going to do meat. Well, eating meat has two components to it that you should be aware of. Okay, there's one component that is just a health component. If you Google, there's been many studies, but one that was probably the largest and best and most dominant is called the China study. And you can Google the China study. And that was a study done probably now 15 or 20 years ago. And the study itself was over like a 20, 25-year period. It was looking at a statistical comparison between the health of individuals versus what they eat. And it was done in China because it was done in rural China, not in urban China. There may have been a little data out of urban China, but the bulk of the data was in rural China. That was picked because that's one place where people still pretty much stay put and do the same things that they and their parents and their grandparents have done for a long, long time. So in a Western culture, people move around. They go from place to place. They eat different kinds of things all the time. Their diets are very varied. They're not the same. It's very difficult to associate health with what you eat because there's so many variables going on. There's so many different choices in foods. You go to the grocery market and there's hundreds of things you can pick from. If you go to rural China, to a small village, the people there are in a lifestyle that's very simple and very stable. So that's why they made this comparison. So they went to China, and over 20 years they collected data. They had hundreds and hundreds of people employed. It's a very big study to just track all the health issues and everything that the people ate. And what did they find? Well, they found lots of things, but the thing that I'll mention, they found that eating animal protein has about the same effect on your probability of getting cancer as smoking tobacco. It's about at the same level. So animal protein works as a carcinogen about like tobacco. Smoking tobacco works as our carcinogen. Yeah, wow. That's a big one, isn't it? Well, that's what they found. And it was all types of cancer, just like actually they found smoking, though it was associated first with lung cancer, and that is its primary thing. Smoking is really associated with lots of different kinds of cancer. So that's just the health reason. And animal protein, that's not just meat. That's eggs. That's milk. That's cheese. Ooh, cheese now. In Mexico, cheese is, it's not food if it doesn't have cheese on it. So, now, there is some good news there, though. They found that if the total diet had less than, and I think it was 20% of animal protein, total diet, the number of total calories that you eat in a day, if it was less than 20% animal protein, the effect was very small. It was not such a strong carcinogen. If it was more than 20% of your daily, of your normal intake, then it started to get, to have a bigger and bigger effect. Okay, so it's not just that any animal protein in any amount is going to cause you a terrible problem. Small amounts, not really a big deal. That's what the study said. The more it becomes, the higher fraction it is of your total intake, the bigger the problem gets. The typical average was about 20%. Or less is not so bad. More than 20% gets progressively worse. If you eat a lot of these things, then you're at about the same risk of cancer of eating them as you are smoking. So that's one thing about meat. It's not really a healthy thing to eat. Now, think of this. This is in rural China. The meat they eat in rural China is probably living in their backyard. These are simple little farms. This isn't big agribusiness. This is somebody has a couple of chickens and maybe a pig in the backyard. This is organic meat. This is meat that's fed natural things. The goats eat the grass that grows on the ground. These are not factory farms at all. So this is kind of the best quality meat I suspect that you get. It's fresh. It's not processed. It's fed off the land, natural things. So, if you look at the meat that we eat in the West, it's not like that. It comes from a big business. There's lots of bacteria involved. It goes through slaughterhouses that aren't clean. They have all this other stuff involved in the meat that you eat. There's preservatives in it. Nitrates get added to the meat so that they don't spoil, et cetera, et cetera. So there hasn't been a study about what that does, but we can only imagine that that makes the problem worse. So if you're going to eat meat, I'd try to get organic and not a whole lot of it. So that's bad news, right? You didn't want to hear that. That's really bad news. But now there's even more bad news, and that is there's a whole nother way of looking at meat that is important. You have the health aspect of it, but there's a moral aspect to it as well. Okay? And they're separate. They're just two separate things, the health aspect and the moral aspect. Okay? What's the moral aspect? The moral aspect is that if you kill other things to eat because you're hungry, And if you don't kill and eat them, you will starve to death, so you need to kill things to eat. Well, lions, tigers, and bears, right? They do that. Cats do that, they go out and they kill things and they eat them. And that's good for them to do that, because that's important for their survival. So no problem there. And if we do the same thing, if there's somebody who goes out and catches a fish and eats it, or shoots a deer and eats it because that's their food supply, and they need to do that, then there's no problem there morally with that. That's just the way our reality works. We have food chains, right? Things at the top of the food chain, eat the things at the bottom of the food chain. That's okay. That's our rule set, supports that. But if you go out and kill things just for fun, just for pleasure, that's different. If you don't have to kill things to survive and to be healthy, but you do it anyway just because it's fun, it tastes good, it pleases you. Now we have a moral issue, killing for fun, killing for pleasure, as opposed to killing for sustenance, killing for survival, killing because you need to eat. See, two different things. Killing for fun and killing because you're hungry and need to eat are different moral issues. So that's the second thing about meat. If you order, if you order a chicken or you order a steak, then somewhere some critter is slaughtered to provide that. And if you add that, so you can't say, well, I didn't kill it, I just paid somebody else to kill it. Well, that doesn't get you out of the moral connection. If you contribute to the slaughter of animals for fun, then there's a moral problem. So those are the two. This is kind of my food talk, right? You can do with this whatever you will. This is an individual. I'm not saying you're a bad person, if you have a steak for dinner. That's not it at all. Okay? These are personal choices. They're personal choices, things you want to do. You're not a bad person if you smoke cigarettes. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just a choice. You make your choices, you live with your consequences. Okay? That's all. I just wanted to give you a little information that would make the rest of your life less fun. News that you probably didn't want to hear, but it's probably something you ought to think about anyway. So you can live and be perfectly healthy, get all the protein you need, and never eat any animal protein at all. An interesting fact, if you take a pound of meat, a pound of steak, and a pound of broccoli, the steak will have more protein in it. But if you take a calorie, or let's say 1,000 calories worth of meat and 1,000 calories worth of broccoli, the broccoli will have much more protein in it per calorie. I think it's like two or three times as much protein as the meat. You see, so calorie for calorie, you get more protein than you do from eating meat. Now, pound or by pound, if you do it by weight, you see, the meat has more protein than the broccoli. But weight isn't really what's important here, right? When you eat, it's not weight. It's not, well, I'm going to eat 3 pounds today. We don't do it that way. Or grams, I guess, kilograms here, I should say. We don't do it that way, and that's not the way your body deals with it either. Your body deals with it in terms of calories. How many calories are you going to eat today? Well, if you think of it in those terms, your vegetables, your legumes will provide you more protein per calorie than, well, your meat. The idea that meat has certain kinds of proteins and vitamin B12 and things that you can't get in vegetables generally is not the case. That's not really a good argument. You get all the protein that you can use without eating meat. The idea that we need so much protein is generally propaganda created by the people who sell meat. Anyway, that's kind of about food. So you make your own choices. and you get your own consequences of the choices. But you should know that if you're trying to meditate and you're trying to do things and you're real serious about that the sugar will make it harder for you. And so will the nicotine, so will the caffeine, and so will the preservatives. All those things will cloud your mind. We're going to get a lot of questions on this, aren't we? We're going to hear a lot about this afternoon. Well, there is another thing. Let me add to that. From the moral standpoint, right? The moral standpoint's about killing for fun, killing for pleasure. But that doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have to quit eating meat. Just from the moral viewpoint, you can still eat meat under certain circumstances and not be morally culpable. So how is that? Well, if you, let's say you go to a restaurant with a friend of yours and your friend of yours orders a steak. And the friend of yours, because the friend of yours, is not a vegetarian, they just ordered the steak. And they only eat part of it, and they say, would you like the rest of my steak? Well, you can eat that steak, and you're not morally connected to that. Now, if your friend says, I know you don't want to eat steak, so I'll buy some for you, that doesn't work. But if it's just, if you are a, what do we call it? If you only eat what's already been killed for some other reason by some other person, if you eat roadkill, right? If you drive down the road, you see something that's already dead, like a vulture, right? If you do that and you pick up the roadkill, there's no moral thing to it. So it's something that's already been, that you don't have any. If you go to a buffet. Let's say you work for a company, your company has a Christmas party, and there's 2,000 or 3,000 of you in the company, and the company buys a whole bunch of shrimp and they put it out there on the thing. Whether you eat it or not had nothing to do with how much was bought, had nothing to do with whatever, because the company always buys the same 20 pounds of shrimp every year, and there's thousands of people. It always runs out about halfway through the party, and that's just what they do. Well, if you eat that, you don't have the moral connection. So from the moral standpoint, you can still eat meat, you just can't contribute to killing it. You see? From the health standpoint, if you eat any of the animal protein, it contributes to raising your probability of health problems. Now, there are plenty of people who eat meat all the time and never do get cancers. There's people who smoke all the time and never get cancers either. All it's doing is changing your probability. So what is it we call that? If you eat things that are already dead, what are you? What's the name for that? Huh? Vulture? That's an animal that does that, but what do you call vultures and coyotes and things that scavenger, that's the word I couldn't think of, scavenger. Okay, so from a moral viewpoint, if you're only a scavenger, then you're off the hook, morally. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we can talk a little bit now. Let's see. Somebody wanted me to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is important, and why it's important is it's one of our instruments of dealing with fear and ego. It's a process of dealing with fear and ego. If you are not forgiving, what does that mean? You hold a grudge, you're upset about something wasn't the way you thought it should be, and it makes you angry. So it's all about you, isn't it? You're upset, you're hurt, and you're going to stay hurt, and they're going to pay for it. Well, obviously, all that is fear and all that is ego. And what are we supposed to do with fear and ego? We're supposed to let it go. So what is forgiveness? It's just letting it go. You forgive, you let it go. Instead of maintaining that fear and maintaining that ego and maintaining all that unhappiness and negativity, you just let it go. So forgiveness is one of the fundamental processes of letting go of fear and ego. So that's why forgiveness is a good thing. And who do we need to forgive most of all? Ourselves. Right? Don't forget yourself when you're making your list for forgiveness. We are usually our own worst critic. So, one good way to practice getting rid of fear and ego is to be forgiving. Let things go. Somebody gives you a slight, let it go. So that's kind of the first step. After you let it go, maybe you can be helpful to that person. Help them let things go. Help them maybe not feel so combative. So forgiveness is like the first step in letting go. Well, where are we time-wise now? 11:04. Time, or 11:30, we get a break, right? Going through. Okay, I can go on for a little more time. Yeah, questions after break. Okay, I got a little more time before the break. I would like to talk just a little bit more about the healing that we discussed. There is one other interesting thing about healing that it can teach you. It can teach you some of what I've been saying about how we create our own reality and the metaphors and how we interpret. Those of you who, I guess most of you were here when we did when I talked about healing, we talked about the way you can approach it. This is just a standard approach where you imagine the body that you're going to heal in kind of an outline form, like a gingerbread man cookie, and then you have an intent that what is healthy is white and what is unhealthy is black. Right? Remember that? And then you put light on the black to make it go away, or energy on the black to make it go away. I think I mentioned that there really is no such thing as light or energy. These are just metaphors. Okay, that's not what you're doing. It's your intent that makes the difference. What we could have done, and sometimes is a good thing to do, is just the opposite. We could say, what is unhealthy is a bright, shiny black. I mean, what is healthy is a bright, shiny black. And what is unhealthy is white, a dirty white. Now, why would we want to do that? Because if you're looking to locate, say, just a few cancer cells after an operation to remove a tumor, and there's few stray cells around, and you'd like to get rid of those few stray cells, looking for a tiny little black speck on a white background is very hard, because our minds are trained to ignore that kind of stuff. We don't really see the lint on people's jackets and stuff. We ignore all the little details, the little tiny specks, little fly specks. We don't notice. It's a much harder thing to see. But if we have what's good as a glossy, shiny black, and what's bad is white, and that bad stuff that's white is so white that it actually sends out beams of white light. Now we can look at a black thing and see all these little beams of light coming out of it. Oh, those are the cancer cells, you see? So we can make them black, like the rest of the good stuff. See how it's a different tool used for a different thing. So I wanted to say that just as an example to let you know, don't get stuck on your tools. Make tools that work for you. So that would be a good tool to make, and it's all intention. If you start with the intention of You know, this represents, this humanoid shape represents Suzy Q. And, you know, now I want the good stuff to be this way. So you're just setting up what you're doing and the output format that you want your data in. You've got to communicate with the system. And the system needs to communicate with you, in this case, in pictures. Because words wouldn't do very well. Words would be more difficult. Pictures, you get a lot of information in. But there's nothing sacred about the tool set. Use whatever tools work. When you're healing, instead of, if you're going to use light, sometimes you might say, I'll use light, but it'll be whatever color will best serve the purpose. And you may get reds and greens and all kinds of other colors involved in it, instead of your everyday white. You see? So don't be limited by the tools that you can imagine, you know, don't be limited by the tools that you learn about. These tools are just techniques for focusing your intent. If we had more control over our consciousness, we wouldn't have to use tools. But most of us have all these habits of thinking, so we use tools so that we can harness those habits to help us focus our intents. So you can change the colors. You may want to say that things that are calm, if you're working on an attitude, if you're working on a mental state, and you want to calm that person down, say somebody that's maybe grieving or somebody that's upset about something, you just want to calm them down. Then you might want to visualize it in terms of a jagged red that is excited and upset with a icy blue, which is very calm. You see? It doesn't matter what the colors are. It really doesn't matter how you put the structure together. It just has to be clearly intended so that you and the database know what it is you want and what you're doing, and it can work then with that pattern. So that was just another thing I wanted to point out to you, that, you know, black bad spots with white good light suits us because we have cultural metaphors. You know, all the bad guys wear black hats, right? And all the good guys wear white hats. So we kind of have this association about the white is pure, the white is one, you know, the black represents, you know, negativity and that kind of thing. So because that's our cultural stuff, then we put that cultural beliefs into work for us by defining the black as bad and the white as good. It just helps us focus that way. But you should be able to rise above your beliefs. The beliefs just constrain you. There's certain times other colors and other things work better. Experiment. Don't just take a system that somebody gives you and use it, but realize the system of tools is just somebody else's set of tools that helps them focus. Make your own custom set of tools that help you focus. Evidently somebody wants to talk about love, becoming love, right? You need to talk about becoming love. Okay. We'll do that. One thing I haven't told you yet about love, and another way to look at it, is that love is like meditation. Okay. It's not something you have to learn how to do. Okay. You just be it. Okay. You simply have to, you be it. It's an expression of what's inside. So you don't have to learn how to do it. You don't even really have to learn how to be it. You simply have to learn how to stop blocking it. So that means you have to get rid of the fear. If you get rid of the fear and you get rid of the ego, I need, I want, I have to have, I desire, you get rid of that stuff, and what's left is love. So you don't have to go out and become something else or do something else. You just have to get the stuff that's blocking it out of the way, and it's already there. See, that's what you are. You have this potential to become love, and then you cover that potential up with the fear. So that's a good, that's a good thought. That it's not a thing you have to go out and learn how to do. You just have to learn how to stop blocking it. We talked about love being unconditional, and that if it's conditional, it's not love. And well, I can go into it now, or we can wait till later. I'd like to talk to you some about relationships. And we have relationships with people, and I'll get into more of it maybe in the next session. But everybody has a different capacity to love. Our capacity to love is dependent upon how much fear we have. If this fear and ego is very big, our capacity to love is small. Okay? As our capacity to love grows, the fear and ego goes away. Now, doesn't that make sense when I tell you that to become love, all you have to do is get rid of the fear? So you see, if you have a lot of fear, then the becoming love is a very hard thing because you don't have much capacity to love. You have a lot of capacity to fear and not much capacity to love, and vice versa. So as we have relationships with people and we try to interact with them, understand that some people just don't have that much capacity to love. And they may be giving and loving all they have. You see? They may actually be giving you all the love they've got. Because if they don't have a very large capacity to love, you might not feel like that's enough. But it's all they've got. So at that point, you need to look at them and say, well, that's who they are. They're doing the best they can, and feel compassion rather than feel anger, because they're giving it all that they can give you, because they have too much fear. You can help them reduce that fear, but you can't reduce it for them. And realize that people are just like that, and until they're ready to reduce that fear, it's not going to be reduced. Give them the environment where they feel safe enough to do it, and they might. If they still don't, then you need to accept it. So if you're in a relationship, what that means is you have a choice. You can accept it, and if you accept it, you have to accept it with grace. You have to accept it and really accept it. You can't just accept it intellectually and begrudge it at the being level. So if you're in a relationship and your other partner is limited in the amount they can love, but they're giving you all they've got, then you have to decide, well, can I just accept that? That means that if you say, yes, I'll accept it, I want this situation. It's got other parts of the situation that are good. I want this situation, and I accept that. Well, you have to accept it and be happy with it. If you say, well, I can accept it, but I can't be happy with it, you haven't really accepted it. So if you accept it and it's okay, then it's okay. If you can accept it, then look at the probability. Look at the potential for growth in that relationship. What's the probability? What's the potential that that person is going to let go of some of that fear, increase their capacity to love? And if you say, well, that might happen, I might be able to encourage that, I'm going to give it a try. I'm just going to love them and give to them and make it just so safe and secure for them that they can relax that fear and let it go.
que a lo mejor, o sea,
Do
podrían
that.
relajarse y dejar
If
ese
you come to the
temor.
conclusion
Si
that
llegan a la conclusión,
there's really no
sin
potential here,
embargo, de que no
it's
hay
just not
potencial
going to
ahí,
happen.
esto no va a suceder.
I've tried, I've given it
Ya
my
lo
best
intenté,
shot, and it's not going to happen.
ya hice mi mejor
Okay, then
intento, no está
again, you either
sucediendo.
live with that and
O
accept
viven
it
con- o
gracefully,
viven con ello y lo aceptan
or
con gracia, o
you have to leave.
tienen que
You have to
abandonar
go
esa
someplace
relación
else.
y tienen
Because
que
you are
buscar otro
not
lugar, porque
helpful
no van a ser de
to
ninguna
yourself
utilidad
or to the other
a ustedes
person
mismos o a la otra
by
persona,
just,
si sencillamente
if that's your
están
life, is clawing at each other
peleando con
all
ella
the
todo el
time,
tiempo, o sea, con ella,
that's damaging
porque es
to
un
everybody around you.
perjudicial para todos a su alrededor.
Not just you and the other person, but
Ustedes y esa
everybody
otra persona,
around
sino a
you
todos.
gets
Eso
drugged
va a
down
arrastrar
when
a
they're
todas
around
las
you.
personas que estén
So
alrededor de ustedes
it's
y de
best
esa
to
persona, de modo
go
que
find
siempre es
something
mejor
more compatible
retirarse y
that works
encontrar algo
better.
más compatible que les funcione mejor.
So that's not really the same relationship stuff we're going to talk about later, but
Bueno,
that's
no es
that's
el único aspecto del que hablaremos
kind of
más
fundamentally
acerca de las relaciones,
the
pero
way we
de
have
manera
to
básica,
interact with each
es esta
other.
la forma en la que tenemos que interactuar entre nosotros, ¿de
That's
acuerdo?
being realistic.
Eso es
But
ser
the thing that's
realista.
hard is to just
Lo
accept
que
that
realmente
people
es
are the way they
difícil es
are.
sencillamente aceptar a las
They
personas
won't
como
change
son
until
y
they
aceptar que no los vamos a
until they
poder cambiar
are ready to grow, and you
y que
can't
no
make
van a
them grow.
cambiar sino hasta que ellos estén listos para
And the
cambiar y
problem, the
crecer.
fear
Y
problem,
el problema,
is
el
not
problema del
intellectual.
miedo no es
This is
intelectual.
another thing.
Eso
Fear
es
is
otra
not
cosa.
intellectual.
El temor no es
Another
intelectual.
product of fear is guilt.
Otro
Guilt
producto
is
del
not
temor es la
intellectual.
culpa, y la culpa tampoco es
Ego
intelectual.
is not
El ego
intellectual.
no es
So you
intelectual.
can sit down with someone
Entonces
and
ustedes se podrán
intellectually
sentar con alguien
go over
y
all the problems
platicar con
and
ellos todos los
things that
problemas
you
a
think
nivel
they should do
intelectual,
better, right,
todas
to
esas
suit
cosas
you,
que
and they
ustedes
can tell you
consideran
the
que
things you
deberían
need to
hacer
do better,
mejor, y ellos
and you can
también
have
pueden
all this
declarar ustedes lo
intellectual
que creen
stuff
que
going
deberían
on
hacer
between you.
mejor, y
We're
es una
solving
plática a nivel
problems now. We're going to
intelectual,
talk
estamos
about it.
resolviendo las cosas,
And that
estamos
talk about
hablando.
it only works
Y
if it
hablar de
reaches
eso
down to the being
solamente
level.
funciona en realidad si puede
Because
llegar
these
al nivel del
problems
ser,
are at the being level.
porque estos
They're
problemas
not
se
at the
encuentran en
intellectual
el nivel
level.
del ser, no en el nivel intelectual.
People aren't rude because they think being rude is
La
a neat
gente no
thing
es
to
grosera
do.
porque considere que
People are
eso es
rude
algo
because
bueno.
that's an
La gente es
expression
grosera
of
porque es una
themselves.
expresión de sí
Or
mismos.
you're not joyful and you're not happy
si alguien no es
because you
alegre,
think that
no
would
es
be the great way to
feliz,
be. You might
no es
act
porque
happy,
crean que esa es la manera
but you aren't
correcta de
happy
ser, puede
unless
ser
it
nada
comes
más una
from the
manifestación
being level.
de lo que está
So
a
you
nivel
see,
del ser.
most of your fear-based problems do
Entonces,
not
la
have
mayoría
an
de los problemas que están
intellectual
basados en el miedo
solution.
no tienen una
So you can't go
solución
and just,
intelectual.
talk to the
No
person
pueden
about
nada
changing their
más hablar
behavior.
con una
They can
persona
maybe
para decirle
act
que
with
cambie
better
su actitud.
behavior,
Puede ser
but
que
unless they
actúen
change at the
de
being
manera
level,
mejor, su conducta sea mejor,
they
pero a
really
nivel
don't,
del ser, las
they
cosas
haven't
no van
really
a
gained
cambiar
anything
porque
substantial.
no habrán
They're the
aprendido
same
nada
person, and
sustancial,
eventually that
seguirán siendo la
acting will
misma
grow
persona,
old,
y con
and
el
it'll go
tiempo
right
ese
back to
cambio
the
de
way it was.
conducta
You can't act forever.
cederá y van a volver a ser como
Acting
eran antes,
is only temporary.
porque la conducta es nada más temporal.
So if you don't have an intellectual
Entonces,
solution,
si no
then this
tienen una
idea, well,
solución
I've told you and I've told
intelectual,
you, and it doesn't seem to do any
les
good. Well,
dije
of course
una
it
y
doesn't
otra
do any
vez y
good.
parece que no sirve de nada.
The intellect
Por
isn't
supuesto que no
where the
sirve de
problem's
nada, porque el
solved.
problema
The
no se
problem
puede
has to be
resolver a nivel
solved not by
intelectual.
you telling
Se
somebody,
tiene que
but
resolver
by you
no cuando le
being in
digamos
such a
a
way
alguien, sino
that it
al
helps
ser
them
de cierta forma que le podamos
change at the
ayudar
being
a
level.
esa persona a cambiar a nivel
So
de su
all of the
ser.
times we run into problems with
Entonces,
people,
todas
we
las
want
veces
to
que
talk
tenemos
them out.
problemas con personas y decimos,
And the
"Ah,
talking
quiero
is
hablar con
sometimes
ellos y
helpful,
solucionar
most
el
of the
problema",
time
y a veces
not.
ayuda, pero la
If
mayor
there's
parte
just
de las veces no ayuda.
understandings of
Porque
misunderstandings,
nada
the
más
talking can
existe,
be
bueno, una
wonderful.
comprensión y a lo mejor
The
se puede
talking can
resolver
solve the problem because it was
malentendidos,
just a
eso ayuda,
misunderstanding.
cuando nada más el
You know,
problema
the
es un
communication
malentendido,
wasn't
pues
good.
la comunicación no
Talking
fue
can
buena,
solve that.
entonces
That's an
platicar
intellectual
puede
problem.
solucionar el problema.
And maybe a
Ese es un
perception
proceso
problem.
intelectual porque hubo un
But if
problema
it's a
intelectual
problem
o un
of
problema de
capacity,
percepción.
a problem
Pero si
of
el
fear,
problema es de capacidad, si el problema es
you need to fix
de
it
temores,
other
entonces
ways.
se debe resolver de otras maneras.
All right. So becoming love is really
Entonces, llegar a
an
ser
act
amor,
of
convertirnos
stop
en amor,
blocking it.
es sencillamente el acto de dejar de bloquearlo.